Alright, so we're back with the HotBodies Tornado. In the last episode, I did the breakdown and I got this car ready to drive. And I thought I was going to disassemble this one and reassemble it, but now that I have all these parts here and laid out like this, I think I'm gonna build one, just so that way instead of cleaning stuff up and moving it around, I can just use this layout to build one from scratch. I have a reference right there, so that way I'll be more familiar with the assembly process, because I'm familiar with the disassembly process as I've done it twice, but putting one together is not something I've done in a long time. Like I said, I redid these two a while back, but that was a while ago, so I'll get refreshed on that. So that way the second build or rebuild will be a lot smoother. And then that way I'll just have extra parts for these cars. So yeah, that's I think the game plan here. And yeah, we'll see where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna do some brainstorming and see where I'm gonna begin this. The belts for the RS4s did come in from South Korea, but they can wait. So yeah, let me do some brainstorming and see where I'm gonna begin. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is go over these parts and figure out which ones are cleaner, essentially, and just put away what I don't need and what I'll use for spares. And for example, you can see that this pulley mount is worn out from debris getting stuck in the belt and the pulley. So obviously I'll use that for spare. Keep this one. You can see that the same thing happened here, but not as bad. So that's an example of that. Between the two cars I disassembled, there's one full set of good belts. One of the spare gears was messed up, and I think this one may be messed up as well. You can see that there's some damage on the plastic there. There's a pin that goes through, and the pin you can see is a little bit exposed. So I'm not sure if that's something to worry about. So I'll look into that. Probably take this one apart, just take the gears off and look at them, make sure that that's okay or not. And yeah, so that's kind of what my plan is here, is making sure I go through all the, I'll use the nicer shocks, I'll use the nicer gear stuff, as far as these pulleys go, and yeah, kind of go from there. Alright, so I've put away the parts that I'm not going to use. I've got a couple of parts stash bags. I'm going to start putting things together. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to begin, but that's where we're at now. So this is what I've got done so far. Got the front end in, I've got the rear end in, and I'm just going to work on the center chassis and finish that. I'm not sure if I'm going to have everything I need to complete it, just because when I disassembled this just to be sure how it worked, I noticed that there's another bearing in here that I don't have. So I'll have to look into that. But this is coming along pretty nicely. Won't take much to finish it up. I'll have some leftover bits here, but yeah, it's coming together pretty nice. So get back to it and get this thing to be a roller. This reference car has its own thing going on. We'll get to that in a little bit, but for now, we made some progress on this roller. Just need to connect the rest of the drive line and finish the rest of the top chassis. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the difference in the new gear. I think this is the second gear. I don't know, but it's 40 tooth. So you can see how nice the fresh gear looks, and you can see that the used one is quite worn in that spot where the 2-speed engages with it, and in this other gear it's actually a little more worn there. So I'm gonna go ahead and reassemble the stock transmission how it is on this car, the roller. Here's the diagram of that 2-speed transmission if you have this car and can't find the part numbers or what it looks like or what it's supposed to look like. This is it. So once I rebuild this, we'll go over what the differences are between the two transmissions. And after that, we'll go over the 40 tooth spur gears in these two to be sure that they are usable, you know. This one did perform quite well, so if this is in worse condition than those other two over here, then we know that it's fine to use those gears. So let's get this assembled and keep moving along. Alright, so that went together really nicely. It was pretty seamless install here. Yeah, the hardest part was just making sure that the one-way bearing made it into here without, you know, jamming things up, because you don't want to ruin the contacts. So let's see if this is worth keeping. But here's the thing, when I look at this transmission here, and likewise this one, if those are 43 tooth, let's see. It doesn't say on that side. So the thing is, I don't even know if those are the same gears as these stock ones. And obviously this has its own thing going on. We'll get into that. But and this one you can see obviously has it set up for a rotary carb. And these are for slide carbs. So there's slight variations in this platform, but I just need to figure out what they are just so I know where things stand. It doesn't say how many teeth are on this gear as well, so I gotta see what's going on with this smaller gear and what the differences are, and like I said, if those are worn excuse me, worn at all or worn more or whatever. So that's the next thing to figure out after we get into this one. So I know this one has something wrong in the front end of the driveline. I don't know if it's the spool or the pulley or the belt or the combination of all three, but from what I've noticed, that seems to be a common area for issues to occur. So I'm going to go ahead and take the top plate off so we can look at the belts, or the front belt, and see exactly what we need to do. I know that things are different, and we'll go over this in a moment, but I just want to see what condition everything else is in so we can replace that and then get to this. Alright, so I pulled the top chassis off. I examined the rear end. There seems to be no damage on the belt, spool, or pulley. And then I observed the front end, and there was no damage on the spool, but the belt and the pulley were damaged. So those two need to be replaced, the belt and the pulley here. So since I had already disassembled this and I'm going to need a new small pulley, I figure we'll just replace both of them and use a new set. So I've got my front belt, the pulleys I'm going to need, and I'm going to go ahead and just clean up the little debris here. Like I said, this one was pretty clean. So we'll do that and get this reassembled, and then we'll go over what's going on here with the transmission. Alright, so I got the front end all cleaned up, and I replaced the two broken parts, which was the belt and the pulley here. This is the status of the other ones that were in there. You see, this is just completely trashed. And likewise the belt, half the teeth throughout the whole thing are just chewed. So that's the status of that. But yeah, that, you know, cleaned up nice, feels nice and smooth. We're ready to reassemble this. Reinstall, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna clean it off before I put it back on the chassis. And then we can get into this transmission stuff. Alright, so now that that's all assembled, we're ready to get the driveline finished and go over what's in this transmission. So after examining both of these stock 40-tooth spare gears, I've noticed that they're both pretty much knocked down to the same point, which is where this pin is and why the pin is there. So with these in the same condition, I'm just going to go ahead and try and run them as they are, as I only have one set left. So we'll see what this yields for performance, and we have something to compare it to with this one here. But as you can see, the stock gears are completely flat here, and they have the number on it, and these ones don't. So that's part of what I need to figure out with the different variations. And likewise with this servo setup for the throttle. So the 43 tooth was replaced with the HPI one. My hunch was correct. It is the same part number. And they use this 2-speed adapter here to make that happen. As you can see, this is a completely different shape and requires a different bearing. So basically the previous owner had already gone ahead and done the research to find out that these parts fit, because that's the only way I was able to compare what I had and test this theory here. So that's good to know. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this new gear swapped over to this adapter. And it's good to know that I have another brand new one of these, so that if something goes wrong with another 43 tooth, I'll be able to install one. So the only difference I'm noticing with this is that there's this washer here, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and figure out where that goes as I'm reassembling it. But that shouldn't be too hard. So I'm gonna go ahead and start installing these parts and look for a proper set of wheels to complete this car, so that way it's a complete roller, because I think that I can get this thing running sooner than later. I'm sure I have these engine mounts. I'm sure I have a setup that can be used on it. And if not, I've got some nice rollers to continue the collection with, and hopefully find parts and finish. But enough about that. I'm going to get these parts together and see what I can find for wheels. Alright, got some nice foams, and the reference is now a roller as well. Looks good with those nice fresh gears and pulleys. This one got a new set of pulleys, one new gear, and a new belt. And this one got a new gear, a new set of pulleys, and I ended up using what was left between the two cars between the belts. So I got used belts in there, which were in great condition. So we've got 3 different transmission configurations here. One is box stock, the other's hybrid, and the other 2 are unknown. So I'll have to look into all of that to be sure I know where each platform stands, each car individually, I mean. Go ahead and throw these parts away. I'll add this to the parts bag. And yeah, so let's get all this stuff cleaned up and see where everything stands. Alright, so we've got the 2 rollers here. They're looking quite good. I don't have a tank in this one because I have to figure out what's going on with the lids. The foam is worn out on those. You can see that that's what it's supposed to look like. It doesn't look like that either of the tanks. I'm not even sure it looks like that here. The foam, it's black, but it looks complete. So that's why I don't have a tank in there. But we'll figure something out. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and take the gears off this just to be sure that the point of contact from the shifting isn't, you know, vigorously worn. So I'll go ahead and look into that right now on this car before I continue to drive it. It did drive very well, so let's assess that gear. Alright, so after removing everything and inspecting the gears, it turns out that they are the same stock gears. It's just that I installed it the other way. I guess. I don't know. So, yeah. This other person installed it this way. I know I have the writing on the bearing facing outward, peeping through next to the 43. So that's the difference. So it is good to know. These are the stock gears, and my hunch was correct. This one is much more worn. I'm not even sure there's a pin in there anymore. So I'm gonna look into whether or not just putting a pin in there will, you know, save this gear for a little bit longer or not. This came off the car that I was driving, and I thought the performance was fine. And this is a gear off of one of the other cars. It definitely still has the pin. You can see there's no evidence of it there. And this one's not nearly as worn. So I'm gonna save this for spare like I intended, and my hypothesis was correct. Since this is more worn, I know that this is okay to drive as it is, but I'm gonna see if I can get something to go in that where that pin goes to preserve it a little longer, and yeah, that's good to know. So there really only is two ways to approach this. That's with stock parts, which will be very hard to find at this point, or the HPI conversions. The next piece I need to find out is which HPI part will replace this 40 tooth HotBodies spare gear. So I'm gonna look in the little spare parts I have and see if I have a pin that'll go in there appropriately, and then I'm going to reassemble this and it'll be ready for testing. But that's good news because these two are not nearly as worn, so that's good to know. Alright, so after looking at the spares, I found a hood pin that was the perfect size. So I snipped a piece off and then snipped it down so that it fit right in there. And I feel a little better about having something in there that's a little more solid for the connection. So yeah, we'll see how that changes the performance or not. And hopefully that's a sure way to get more life out of these gears here, because as you know, they're hard to come by. So that's a temporary solution, though I'm still in the pursuit to find exactly which HPI part can replace this. But for now, I've got one left. So I'm gonna go ahead and reassemble this. Alright, so it's back together and ready to hit the field again. So that's good to know. A lot of learning here with this refurbishment. These look really fresh. It's nice. Obviously there's still more to go on this one and that one as well, but it's good to know where they stand. I'm glad that I took this belt off because there was a rock jammed into one of the teeth. I noticed that there wasn't full contact with this plate off on one of the teeth back here, so when I pulled the pulley off, I noticed that there was like I said, a little rock jammed in there. Those are the things you got to look out for with the belt-driven cars. It's one of the hazards of driving in civilian territory, if you will, just because obviously it's not a prepped field. So that's good. So now what I'm going to do is just do the same here, just be sure things are okay with this transmission, and then I'm going to look into getting a boot on this carburetor or replacing the carburetor, so that way I can drive this one as well. This is from a HPI Sport 3. I only put it facing this way because I didn't feel like taking the engine out, and I'm okay with that. So yeah. So for these rollers, I decided to use the bodies I was going to use on my RS4s. And I'm going to use some truck bodies for the RS4s. But I'll have to fit those and get the proper body mounts and stuff in due course. But that's where those stand. So with the pin in this one, I'm going to check to see that this one the same. Alright, so there still seems to be some sort of pin in there. Maybe it's broken. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look into whether or not I can get that fragment out of there, or if it's a solid piece, and we'll see. But this one's not in as bad condition as the one that came out of the one I've driven recently. But it's in worse condition than the two rollers there. So let's look at this and see what we can find. Alright, so this one did still have the pin solid through, so that's good. Now I just gotta find some wheels for it, and then we can add this to the testing list. These are the wheels I found. They're Power Hobby or Jetco. I've used these on a short course truck, 10th scale basher, and they seem to be good. And they looked pretty good from the pictures and stuff, so I figured since I had success on another platform, I should try out the 10th scale tires. And I think this will be a good platform to test them on. I do remember driving this car last, and it did run well and shift. There was no problems with it. I just want to see how these soft tires go up against some body rub. I know that there's going to be body rub, especially when turning. So yeah, that's pretty much it. They came together pretty nicely here, and yeah, these are the parts I used for the rollers. 2 sets of the pulleys, 1 of the belts, some spur gears, and yeah, it's coming along. So that's all I got. I think this is a good point to stop. I've got the major overhaul done. I know what bodies and wheels I'm going to use. I know what to look for with the spur gears. I just got to test these 2 again. So that'll be what the next video is with these. And then I'll decide what I want to do going forward. I definitely do want to finish these because they're really nice cars. Everything on there is totally clean. And yeah, so I hope this was helpful to anyone else who has the HotBodies Tornado. Those are some of the things that you're going to encounter and need to look for. So after I run these 2 in the next episode, I'll start looking into what engines I'm going to run. Before I run them though, this one I'm going to have to look for a carb boot. So that's why I get these out. So I'm either going to find a boot, or I'm going to switch the carburetor, or I'm going to switch the whole engine. So stay tuned for all that, because that's what's in store. But anyways, if you've made it this far, thanks for your interest in Nitro, and we'll see you on the next one.